Hey, Nomada leaders. This is Kathy Markov. I'm your facilitator for your leadership training program. And I was so excited to be with you this last Wednesday. And I wanted just to put together a little video synopsis of what we covered. So I'm going to share my screen. And then we'll just hopefully I can do this in 10 minutes, just talk through this for you. So again, it was my pleasure. And I am really looking forward to working with each and every one of you over the course of the next about 9 months. So we have a series of 4 classes happen roughly every 2 or 3 months. And this is really an investment in your personal and professional growth and development as leaders, really important people within the overall organization. We're really wanting you in these trainings. The reason why we're doing them live and at different locations throughout your organization's footprint in our beautiful Central Coast is that you begin to develop a peer support network as leaders across the properties. So I hope that you all are getting each other's contact information. And when you have questions, you're not sure, turn to one another, even if they're at a different property. This is a really important for leaders to have a place to go, a safe place to ask questions. And through this, we hope to build your confidence as a leader, to contribute to the success of the organization, and that you are able in turn to create a motivating environment for your staff to feel engaged and to stay working for your organization. So this is what we're going to do. This month, of course, we did leading your team, and this is the synopsis for that. In December, we have plans to do professionalizing your supervision in the hospitality industry. So although this is a course that is sponsored by Nomada, we want you to think about where you fit in the overall hospitality industry. This is why this kind of training is really a gift to you and your professional development. In March, we're going to look at human resources on the ground. I know that maybe doesn't sound like fun, but it's so important for you to understand as a supervisor of people and a leader in your organization, the responsibility that you have in order to maintain the structure from a legal, but also from a point of view of what your organization is looking for you to do in terms of HR, when you can handle things on your own and when to call for help. And then in May, we'll look at creating an inclusive work culture. We'll really take a deep dive in that, looking at motivation and how you can cultivate this work culture that people want to come to work and feel engaged and happy to work for you. So this is really, as I said, an investment in yourself. And it's so exciting for me to work with emerging leaders like you. It really is a best practice. And honestly, only the best companies hire me to do this because they see the value in that. And I'm thrilled to be part of it. Each session will be 2 hours. Live sessions will rotate the locations. So this first one was at the Granada. Our next one in December is going to be at Hotel Inez. So if you haven't been there, that will be great. All sessions will be doing experiential adult learning techniques. So what we'll be doing is having discussions, doing some simulations, doing some case study work. So it's going to be fun. And there will be different opportunities to actually get to know yourself a little bit better. You know, self-awareness is the baseline of really being able to cultivate and develop yourself as a leader. You got to know who you are and then what's possible in other people in order to have a variety of approaches in order to really work with and through people to accomplish organizational goals. You know, this is, yes, something that's sponsored by your employer, but you know, you're going to get a lot out of this. If you come, as you guys showed up this week, I was thrilled with your participation, but you'll get a lot out of this session. So this particular session, we looked at transition to leadership. We really defined leadership and power, and we looked at a theory that I love. It's called situational leadership. and you did a pre-work assignment looking at that. And then we ended by you developing an action plan and some goals as a leader. So let's just dive in. Again, I'll go quickly over this, but this was a book that really inspired me. It's called The Leadership Pipeline, and it followed people through the leap, the transition from one position to the next. You know, the biggest career transition we make is when we do a job really well as a frontline contributor and someone says, you're so good at this, you should be the supervisor. And we make that leap. It's a hard transition to make, because what we need to be doing is thinking about applying different values, using our time differently, and there's some different skills we need to look at. So this whole program is designed to have you think about that in the context of evidence-based theories. I'm not going to geek out too much on the literature, but I do want you to know that the things that we talk about are based in research that has been done in organizational development and human relations. So when we are able to use our time, apply our skills, and really be clear on the values that are necessary in order to be that kind of leader that people want to follow, then we really have that leadership success. This is a chart I love to share because it's showing how things change as we move up in leadership. So, you know, the higher you are, the more conceptual skills or time you need to think. But even when we're a frontline supervisor, you can't just be doing things all the time. Your job is to sit and think about what's happening. How does this work? You're going to be training people, delegating to people. And this is really, really important. The top leaders, you know, they may not need to know all the ins and outs of the point of sales software, and when you're a frontline manager, you're probably training people in the point of sale. So you better know that pretty well. But what is clear is that these human relations behaviors are needed at all levels of leadership. And, you know, people kind of think, they're touchy-feely, the soft skills. You know, there's nothing soft about human relations skills. If they were soft, they wouldn't be so hard. We wouldn't have so many challenging situations, relationships, miscommunication if they were easy. And so this series of classes is really designed to help you be able to stop your craziness of every day and focus in on how do you develop those skills to create that motivating environment. The thing to think, though, is, you know, from your experience, how is this use of your time and shift in skills different from frontline contributors, the people who probably report to you? Well, you know, you are the one who is thinking about things. They probably use a lot of technical skills, and in hospitality, of course, they're human relations skills. So you need to be the one who is making it so that it's easy for them to focus on doing the best they can with what they have to do in their job description in a way that aligns with the customer service expectations, and make sure that you have taken the time to think about how everything fits together and the best way to get things done so they don't have to. So this successful leadership transition, it takes redefining relationships. And in this series of classes, we're going to talk about that. So again, that big leap, you might have been doing such a good job, and now you're supervising people who may have become your friends, and your boss, you might be peers with your former boss. And then what does leadership expect of you? Maybe now you're getting attention from the owners of the company. These are redefining your relationships, and how do you position yourself for success within the organization and the industry. You need to develop process observation skills. This gets to that conceptual piece. So you're you in any given situation, but actually you're able to step back and observe how you are impacting others, how others are impacting and interacting with one another, and things in the environment that you can have an opportunity to change or transform so that the whole operation works better. So those process observation, I call them the third eye skills, are very, very important. You know, one of the big things that's sometimes a little bit hard for people to realize is that you represent the organization, both from actually a legal point of view. If you're in a leadership role, a supervisory role, people are reporting to you, legally, you have the same exposure as, say, an owner in terms of how you behave and how you show up. Also, and I think maybe a bigger realization is that everybody's watching what you do. So let's say there's a dress code and you think, hey, I'm the boss, I can wear open toe shoes. It doesn't matter, I'm the boss. Well, you just gave everybody permission to do that. So it's really important to recognize that people are watching everything you say and do. And so this is a big responsibility and something we need to come to terms with and realize that we set the pace, the tone, and the example for everyone else as a leader. Being extraordinarily good at getting mundane things done. This is really, really important. You're going to have to deal with, you know, people asking for days off, the scheduling, the payroll system, you know, getting people paid on time. There are rules about that kind of thing. Making sure in the hospitality, people take their breaks and take their lunch. You got to get extraordinarily good at that. Because if just scheduling every week takes you a day, you know, you're going to burn out. So get extraordinarily good at the mundane things so that you can spend your time on really the fun, creative things of making sure that it's a work environment that everybody wants to be part of. Learning to manage your time efficiently. So time is a big deal. And when we make this any leadership transition, we start to spend our time on different things and we need to let go of things. We need to learn to delegate and hold people accountable. But that is so your time is freed up probably to do more conceptualizing, planning, organizing, evaluating. Right. So essential time management skills for leaders, training others rather than doing it all yourself. This, of course, is about effective delegation and accountability. How do you hold people accountable? Giving effective feedback, tracking and reporting, you know, productivity, finances, people's performance. You got to find a way to integrate that into the things that you do on a regular basis. Make sure that these things become habits. And you have to leave some unscheduled time for what I call the nouns, right? The people, places, and things that show up. You walk in and oops, you know, someone is not there or 3 people aren't there. What are you going to do? You know, if your schedule is so tight, you don't have any flexibility to deal with unexpected things, which become your responsibility when you're a leader. You know, reason why we talk a lot about these human relations, interacting with other people, you know, making sure you have time to sit and listen with people, because the number one reason why people quit is to get away from their boss. Now, this comes from Inc. magazine, LinkedIn data, and really the gold standard of data on this kind of stuff is Gallup. Gallup does a worldwide survey. They have like hundreds of thousands of workers in the United States and around the world, and they ask this question, why do you leave? Now, this is people who've left jobs. They may not say it to your face. In fact, they're probably not going to. And they may or may not reveal that in an exit interview. They might like you as a person, but can't stand you as a boss, right? So when they tell an independent agency, they say, oh, get away from this terrible boss. Over 50% of people report that's why they leave. So what that indicates to me is the need to make sure that bosses really know what they're doing. So common leadership mistakes, micromanaging, managing through ego or power, failing to listen, disregarding employees, not developing trust for the employees and not creating an environment where we are trusted as our employees. You know, if you're micromanaging people, you're telling people loud and clear, I don't trust you. And you may not even realize that's what you're communicating to people. So lack of trust. It's like the baseline of developing a good relationship, and team spirit is having that trust that goes both ways. You trust them, they trust you. So it really begs the question, what is leadership? And Simon Sinek, who I really think is great, he's got a lot of great videos on YouTube that you can watch about leadership. He says, there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence. Those who lead inspire us. We follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead not for them, but for us. Right? This is really when people, I don't know, have you ever had a boss you just loved? I did. And you know what? I do almost anything for them. Sure, I had limits, right? But I had a boss once, and I just had so much respect and trust in him. If he asked me to do something, I would do it. I had another female boss that I felt the same way about. So this is what we're trying to do, is get to the point where, we do this because we want to, or you create that environment for people. Because FDR said, it is a terrible thing to look over your shoulder when you're trying to lead and find that nobody is there, right? I've said this often, like, you're not a leader if you don't have any followers. And maybe you've had a terrible boss, and that was actually the truth, that, they held the power in the organization, and people did the minimum to satisfy them or to get through the day until they could find a better place to work. But really, they weren't a leader because they didn't have any followers. So what is the difference between leadership and power? This is important because you're in this training because you have some, what we call legitimate organizational power based on your position and responsibility. But that doesn't automatically make you a leader. Leadership is the process of influencing employees towards the achievement of objectives. Power is a person's ability to influence another's behavior. And maybe it is for fear. I had a boss that was really awful, and I was afraid that I was going to get fired. Right? I was not a happy person. It was not a happy time in my life. And I was lucky that I had the opportunity to leave. But it was a difference between having a leader who you want to show up, you want to do your best, and power, somebody who is just forcing you to do something. So let's look at the power a little bit different, because power actually follows on a continuum from your personal power to position power. Right? So all of you have position power, legitimate position power. And to varying degrees, you have the opportunity to reward people. You could give them their day off. You could approve their vacation time. You might be able to give them a raise. You could give them a compliment, right? These are all forms of reward. And maybe you're in a position where you can give a bonus. Not everybody, and I don't know how much power you have. Can you do that on your own? Or do you need someone's approval from that? But you have reward just in how you recognize a good work. That people consider that. Sometimes that's even better than money, right? Coercion, right? You get to punish people. You can write them up. You can have a stern conversation with them. You can point out the things that they're not doing well. And this is coercion. So when you get a legitimate power within an organization, there are varying degrees of that. And I don't know if you can fire someone single-handedly, but you have the power to make recommendations and to work through a process that could be, the ultimate reward, a raise, a promotion, to the ultimate punishment of, termination in an organization. But still, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are a leader. You can use that coercive power, making people afraid of not getting something, or afraid they or working towards getting, carrot and stick kind of approach. That's using power. But the real leaders, they actually are more on the personal power part. So expert leadership is you are an expert. You, have a degree in hospitality management, or you have a degree in viticulture, or you have been trained as a sommelier, or you have been trained as a chef, or you have years of experience in the food industry. So you're an expert. Now, this gives you a lot of power. You can say, no, we don't make that drink that way, or we don't do this way. Referent power is about your charisma, your personality. Do people like you? Now, there's a lot of power in that. So as we're talking about personal power, the question I have for you, is it is that given by your position? Is it only official, legitimate people who have a title in an organization that have the only ones that can have power? Well, actually, no, right? Everyone can have personal power. And this is very important for us when we are supervising people to know that, right? So I like this thing. It says, I'm not lacking leadership skills. Everyone else is lacking followership skills. Right? So if leadership and power, right, both of those definitions had the word influence in them. Influence. So I have a question for you, and it's something to think about. Who are the influential people in what I call your sphere of influence? It's not just about a chain of command who reports to you and who you report to, but you influence other people in your organization. So the people that are in your sphere of influence, who are the influential people, right? This is an important question. And in your direct area of responsibility, who's more influential than you? Are there people that maybe they are new to the organization, but they wield a lot of influence over other people? And is that a positive influence? Are they helping people move towards organizational objectives? Then they have good leadership skills. Or on the other hand, are they putting a toxic element into your workplace? This is really important, because then these are areas for you to focus on and manage and help people move into helping you create that environment that people want to be at, right? You're not the only one who has influence over others. And it's really important for you to consider who are the people in my world that have influence. So what do you need to do to be the kind of leader that people want to follow? Doing has to do with our behavior. Behavior is when knowledge, skills, and actually your attitude come back together. See, someone could have all the knowledge and the education and even the skill, but if they have a bad attitude and they don't want to apply it, then, that behavior is not good. So knowledge, skills, and attitude come together to create our behavior. And this is when we start to talk about situational leadership. So I had you take that pre-work, and I want to break this down so you understand it a little bit. So when we're looking at situational leadership, we're looking at people who might be task-oriented, right? They're really into getting the task done, or maybe they're not so interested in getting the task done. Then there are other people who are really into building relationships, and others are not so into building relationships. So this balance between being task-oriented on the one side and relationship-oriented on the other, this is one of the foundational approaches, theoretical approaches in organizational development, right? Because we find that different people focus on these areas in different ways. So when we're looking at situational leadership, people who are high task but low relationship are considered autocratic, right? Autocratic. These are people who, are good at giving orders. So do this, do that, do this, do that. They're not so concerned with the tone of voice. They just want to get the job done, right? They don't care. You're in the middle of doing something else. Do this now. Now, I'm not saying that that's bad. You'll see there's a lot of breadth to this theory, but we want to look at the contrast of this. So the opposite of that is people who are really high into relationship, but low in task. Right? These people are participatory. So they want to get everybody's input. This is our goal. This is what we have to do. What do you think we should do? And then they ask a lot of questions and they work with people through a process so that others come to the consensus on what has to happen. This is where I feel really comfortable. I feel comfortable being participatory. It's one of the reasons why through my career, I moved myself into the work that I do now, because that's my job, is to help facilitate a conversation so that people come to conclusions on their own. But you know what? That's not always the best approach. And that's where we're going, because in fact, there is no best approach, right? Let's look at these two for a minute. Let's say a fire erupted in a room full of people. My participatory nature would cause me to say, hey, everybody, what do you think we should do? Let's get some ideas, right? Is that appropriate when there's an emergency situation, a fire? No, should be everybody out of the room. Don't get your stuff, just leave. You know, your life is more important than your cell phone that's across the room. Get out. Being autocratic. So the magic of this theory is learning to apply the appropriate situational leader style to the situation. So let's look at the other two, and then I'll give you some clues on how to do this. So if you're high in task and high in relationship, it's considered consultative. So it would seem on the surface that consultative is the right way to be, but guess what? It takes a lot of time to do that. And sometimes it's not appropriate. Then there's this French word called laissez-faire, which is sort of hands off, right? And you would think, why would you ever want to be that way? There are good times to be that way. But sometimes, there are some unpopular decisions that need to be made. And it might be helpful if you have a group of skilled and knowledgeable people rather than forcing something to get some input. We'll talk about that, right? So as I said, your challenge is to apply the appropriate style to the situation. This is where you need your process observation skills to be able to diagnose the situation and apply the right style. Because what we have done in that introductory activity is kind of defined your comfort zone with regard to this theory. Like, I feel really comfortable being participatory. But as I grew and evolved as a leader, I began to realize sometimes I need to be autocratic. Sometimes I just need to be hands off, that I don't have to have my finger in every pot. Give it back to the staff to figure out the things that they can do on their own, right? So we've defined your comfort zone, but the key is to learn to stop, do that process observation, and to think, what's the appropriate style for this situation? I love this because it says all growth starts at the end of our comfort zone. So the best leaders, they diagnose the situation first. They respond rather than react. So the question is, which leadership style is most effective in any given situation? So in the handouts that go with this, and we talked about this in the session, we talked about your time. If it's urgent, like that fire analogy, be autocratic. But if it's not urgent, hey, you can choose one of the other three. So let's look at some of the other ways to diagnose it. Your information and knowledge level is, if you're an expert, hey, go ahead, be autocratic. Be nice about it. Autocratic doesn't mean mean at all. But if you are an expert, go ahead and tell people exactly what you want. People like to listen to experts. If you don't have any information, you're new to the organization, you're new to the situation, this is an area that is not your expertise, then be participatory or even laissez-faire. How will your message be accepted by the other people, right? If you have really good rapport and trust, then you can be autocratic. But if the message is not going to be received well, you may be better leaning towards being more participatory or even laissez-faire, depending on the situation. You know, sometimes it's a high stakes situation. Then you may need to be more on the autocratic side. But if people aren't going to accept what you're saying, how can you get them involved and guide them to come to the same conclusion in terms of what needs to happen? So be more participatory or consultative. What is the receiver's capacity, their ability, and their motivation, right? Motivation is a choice, it's internal. So they could have the ability, the knowledge, the skills, but if they don't want to do it, they don't want to apply them. I mean, this gets to that attitude part, right? Choosing to apply their skills and knowledge in the setting that you want them to. That's motivation. So what's the receiver's capability, right? If they are new in the organization, well, you can be autocratic. In fact, they need it. You don't just hire someone and say, well, you go ahead and do it. Go ahead, read the manual and just do it on your own. That's not a recipe for success. When you first hire people, you need to spend a lot of time with them. Remember, we talked about use of your time. It's a lot of time to have employees working for you. And so you can be autocratic, but what's really important, the really skilled leader, over time, you know, your goal is to get to the point where people can do the job on their own, that you trust them enough, that they're knowledgeable, that you can let them be and let them do their job. You can delegate to them and then hold them accountable. So this is very fluid, and it's very important that you're able to diagnose the situation based on the people, based on the urgency, based on the importance, and be able to pick the style that is appropriate for the situation. And guess what? You try something. If it doesn't work, what do? You just try another way, right? And now you have a peer group of others that know this approach that you can call and say, hey, I got this situation. What do you think I should do? This is what we're hoping to develop among you as the leaders at Nomada. So that was really the content of the interactive session that we had this month. There was lots of discussion and opportunity for people to get together, and I'm looking forward to doing more and more of that in the next one. But one of the things I didn't want you to leave without is developing an action plan and setting some leadership goals. So those are in the handout related to this session. Also, I've created a Google form that I invite you to complete, to share with me your leadership goals. The only person that's going to see it is me. And the only reason why I want to see it is so that I can help design these training courses to meet your need. I'm invested in your success as a leader now and actually forever. I love to hear from students. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And when I get a call or an email from a former student, it makes me so happy. And now you're part of that group of mine too. So I'd love to hear your leadership goals if you're willing to share them with me. And they'll be in that Google form that you will have access to. So I challenge you to do the challenge activity, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, and watch for the next session's pre-work, which will be before the December session. So here's your challenge. Really consider, who are the most influential people in your sphere of influence, right? Use those process observation skills. Is there someone who's in your direct area of responsibility who's more influential than you? And take it the next step. What's the best way to address it? And here's what I would say too. Pick up the phone, call someone that's also in this training program and have a little conversation. You don't have to do all this on your own, but just start to think, who are the influential people? Who are the people in our group that actually use power, but if it was in a positive way towards the organizational goals, maybe you could help them cultivate their leadership. So that's it. That's what we talked about. I love my interaction with all of you. I'm really excited about the next, 9 months. If you have any questions, comments, please send me your feedback, things that went well, things that didn't, requests and offers. You have a special request, even if it's not something we'll cover in class, you want a reference for a book or an article, some ideas about things. I've got tons of things, activities you want to do with your group to help build your team. So this is a collaborative process and a customized training. So I'm here to meet your needs. So that's it for today, for September. And I look forward to working with you. Please keep in touch, and I'll see you in December. You'll be hearing from me throughout the time that we're together. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Good luck, keep in touch, and we'll be together before you know it. December will be here. Okay, my friends, goodbye.